Welcome to All the Things. I'm your host, Stephanie Prehamas. I'm an average girl living an average life, trying to make it beautiful. Gets a little messy out here sometimes, and that's why here we're going to talk about all the things. And today we're going to talk about the importance of friendship. It's such a hot topic. So many people talk about dating all the time, relationships, romantic relationships, careers, but one of the most important parts of our lives is our friendships. And sometimes those conversations get neglected. So today I have my beautiful friend joining me. She is a 36, a proud Aquarius with a big heart, two adorable corgis by her side, which may or may not make appearances throughout this
Yeah,
episode. And
like
a
right
knack,
now.
yeah, and a knack for turning challenges into opportunities for growth. Living in Minnesota, a place she recently moved to without knowing anyone, Ariel is navigating a season of transformation. Currently going through a divorce, she's also on a journey to better understand her late diagnosed autism and what it means to thrive authentically and unapologetically. Despite these hurdles, Ariel's creativity and passion shine brightly. An incredible photographer with an eye for beauty in the everyday, she captures moments that tell stories and evoke emotions. And she also loves to photograph things that other people might not see their beauty in, but she notices it. Whether she's cooking up something delicious, bringing characters to life in theater, or nurturing friendships with her boundless kindness, Ariel is a remarkable human who enriches the lives of everyone she meets. Now she's exploring the world of making friends, dating, and carving out her unique path to joy. Ariel is a testament to resilience and self-discovery, and she's just getting started on her next chapter. So welcome, 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 my beautiful friend.
Thank you, Steph. That's amazing hearing all of that about yourself. Talk about like a confidence boost.
Good. You deserve it.
Putting
So,
it into such kind words. I feel like a lot of that applies to you as well. Resilience, you know?
mhm. Thank
Yeah.
you.
hmm
Thank you. I know it's been quite the year, but this year, well, I want to ask you. So we're just starting. It's
Yeah.
January 2nd. The new
Second.
year,
Yep.
2025 is upon us. And are you someone who makes resolutions? Are you someone who has like a word for the year? What kind of
Um,
like New Year girl are you?
not a word for the year. And like resolutions, I suppose, but I've lately been getting into alternative spirituality because, I wasn't for the majority of my life, despite being raised in a very, very, very conservative church going family. I never believed in it. Like I would have categorized myself as probably agnostic. And so the last 2 years, I've made a really conscious choice to explore maybe what spirituality works for me. And right now, I'm really enjoying paganism and some Wicca thrown in there. And so the seasons are something I really live by. So the new year, it is a new year, but it's also just midwinter and everything for Wiccans and pagans. Their new year or our new year, whatever, it comes later. And so I kind of half-heartedly, not half-heartedly, just I'm like, here's my intentions I'd like for this year. And I just kind of send them out there. I do a lot of journaling, like and stuff as well, and like pull tarot cards, and so that's the kind of stuff that I do. Well, I do it all year, but I kind of did that around December 31st, January 1st, and was like putting my intentions out there for this new year, really just hoping it doesn't suck. Like,
Yeah, well,
but
it sounds like it's already off to a really great start with some friends, some romance, some just
this,
like setting your intentions, building your confidence,
yeah,
working through all this stuff. I know for me too. So I like to kind of think of a theme for the year.
hmm I
And
like that.
so
Yeah.
for me, last year felt so powerless
Yes.
that I just felt like I don't know, it just felt really powerless, is how I felt for most of the year. So this year, I really want to step into my power. So that's kind of my theme for this coming year
Yes.
is stepping into my power
Hell
and
yeah.
just like seeing where that takes me. And just like one of the things too with that is a lot of the times like I never promote myself or um but I'm also trying to grow a business and trying to like eat, So
Yeah.
I'm like, part of that means I have to like promote myself and believe in my product and
You.
believe
Yeah.
in what I'm doing. So that's kind of my theme for
Yeah.
2025.
And I feel like that's been stifled before by, a people or people in your old life or a person in your old life, is promoting yourself and getting yourself out there and everything. And now you're free to do that. And that's just so, I love it because when you say these things, like I'm stepping in my power this year, you're going to step into your power this year. Like I know you. That is what's going to happen.
Yes, exactly. I love it. And so that is why I also think the people you surround yourself with are so, so important
Hmm.
because it's so easy to just keep people around because they're familiar or
Hmm.
because it's what you've always known. And um, okay, so let me back up for a second. So what led me to have this conversation is Eugene and I were driving to Mesoamerica. It's this really cool, like little show that takes you into your mind. It's kind of like a psychedelic journey, is what it reminded me of. But
Okay.
it's at the Science
Cool.
Museum, and this guy like pairs it to music, and it was really cool. So I was like, look, we're
Wow.
going to that. And I was telling him about a dream I had because recently I've been having really vivid dreams, and I think my subconscious is just like talking to me more in my dreams and all that stuff.
Definitely. Yeah.
So I was telling Eugene about it was about one of my friends, and I was telling him about it, and he thinks this friend doesn't really like me anyway. And I was like, oh, interesting. And I was like, maybe my dream was trying to tell me that.
Oh
And
no.
he asked me, he said, why are your friendships so important to you? And I, without even like missing a beat, I said, well, because I don't really have family.
Yeah.
And, at least close family. Like I have family members that exist in the world, but they're not
Yes.
involved in my life at all,
Yeah.
really,
Hmm.
or very, very minimally, like a
Yeah.
little sprinkle here and there. And he was like, oh, because I've never really met anybody whose friends are as important to them as your friends are to you. And I was like, really? I
You
thought that was,
meet like if he met more people without family ties, I think he'd find that that's pretty universal for most of us. And I know you had told me that story earlier, and my first question to you, do you remember my first question? How involved is his family in his
yeah,
life? And you
yes.
said fairly, like they are. And so I think that's why some people can't, they're like, oh, friendships are great, but I have my family. Well, when you don't have that, uh,
Mhm.
it's everything. Like your community and friend groups are just everything. It's so important. And
Yeah.
I love that like that conversation sparked this idea for you.
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk about that in this episode because I thought it was okay. So the other thing with it that I think is interesting is at the same time, then, and I'm sure everyone else who is like us, who doesn't have close family, who then has put so much importance on your friendships, we will often wonder, why aren't our friends reciprocating back to us how much we're giving? But then I'm curious too, where this is going to take us all over the place because I'm like, well, how much is a realistic expectation then to ask our friends?
Yeah.
Because we're putting such a high importance on them where they're just like, they have their family, which they're putting their importance on them. So it feels imbalanced from the beginning. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, that is, you know, varies friendship by friendship, and that is if your friend has a loving and involved family, sometimes that can happen, which I mean, I think communication can help that sometimes, just being like, hey, you're a lot to me, you have and you have a lot more than I do. And usually people are pretty cool about that because I have some good friends who have good involved family and they get it, like they do get it, but nobody gets it quite like other friends that don't have involved family.
Mhm.
I think you're going to find probably the most understanding there from my experience.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to reflect ourselves when there is a friendship where we're feeling like it's off a little bit. It's like,
Mhm.
wait, instead of taking it personal and being like, oh, they must not really like me, or maybe I'm not a really good friend to them,
Yeah.
or something like that is like pausing for a moment and then reflecting on that. Like, wait, are they really close to their family? Do they have lots of
Yep.
family? Maybe their friends are just friends. They don't really see them as family. Do you know
Yep.
what I mean? It's like, because I even said to Eugene, I was like, oh, well, if my friend Sunny was getting married on the same day as one of my sisters, I would go to Sunny's wedding.
Oh,
And he was
yes, that's a
like,
great example.
yeah. And he was like,
Yeah.
what? Whoa. And I was like, yeah, because Sunny's like involved in my life on
Yes.
she,
She's been there for you in a huge way. I know that.
yeah,
And your sisters really haven't.
yeah.
So, and I think that's what matters is that quality time and like, what people have put into your life.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think it's like interesting for people to like then reflect back and be like, whoa, because a lot of people put the expectation, but it's your family, it's your blood. And I'm like, but that doesn't necessarily make you close or involved or know each other at all. And
Yeah.
so I just think it's like really interesting. Okay, so I wanted to talk about a couple things too that I think is really, really important because you were mentioning, and I think this is a great kind of like lead into it. Tell me what Jared, when you told him you're going to talk about this, what did he say to you?
He just said, well, I asked him because he's a good example of this situation. What would be something important on this topic that you'd want people to know? And he just said that, finding a community and friends and quality time is just really important. Don't like if your family is not a part of your life or minimally a part of your life or a negative part of your life, at all, start finding a community of friends to connect with. That will be there for you on everything, holidays, all the things, and don't isolate. Like don't just think, well, I don't have family, so now I'm alone. And that is something like I've done in the past, and it's not good like for your mental health. It's not, and it's not fun, it's not anything. You can still have family. They just don't have to be your blood.
Yeah, and it's not good
Yeah,
for your soul either to
it's not.
isolate. Like our souls are not
Yeah.
meant to isolate. And I think
Yeah.
also what we forget too is we'll say, well, I don't want to be a burden on anyone, right?
Hmm.
But if
Hmm.
you think about the way you love your friends, would you consider them a burden to want to stay?
No,
You know what I mean?
no.
So
Yeah.
so I think
But although
sometimes
I'm guilty of those thoughts,
yes.
like myself.
Yes, but I think we forget like giving an opportunity to our friends to be there for us is super powerful.
Yes.
Everybody feels good when they get to give or
Hmm.
support and all of those things. And so, it's funny. My son asked me the other day, like, what's a moocher? And so sometimes we think
I
like
love him.
we're behind now. And then he's like, "Have you ever experienced a moocher before?" And but I think it's so interesting because we can easily think that we're being looked at negatively by our
Hmm.
friends and we'll hold ourselves back. But there's at least one friend that we can connect with that loves us to the same depth and sees our
Oh yeah.
points to the same depth. And so,
Yeah.
starting with that friend. But anyway, about the not isolating, what I wanted to tie this into is like Keone told me about a year ago. I think he was reading a book by John Gottman, which is like the relationship expert. I love John Gottman. Anybody in my
Yeah.
life knows how much I love him. I think he's so phenomenal, all of his research. Anyway, he was talking about the difference between friendship, like health and friendship for men and women. So
Yeah.
and I'm just going to kind of talk about how he said it. I don't have like the research right in front of my face to quote it. So
Hmm.
this is like generalized. But what he said was for men, they're healthier if they just, whether they're in a happy relationship or not, men will be healthier in a relationship, happier and healthier in a relationship.
Hmm.
Women need to have 10 friends to feel the healthiest and happiest.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I think there's so many reasons that we could go into that, but
Many culturally, I think,
yeah,
reasons,
yeah,
especially in this country, that
yeah,
that's the truth. But it is the
but,
truth, I'm
yeah.
sure.
But that could be a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
So, but today, so I just want to talk about the importance of friendship for women, especially
Yeah.
because, well, and men too, but men, if they have a partner, and I'll tell you some stuff from the Gottman in a second.
Yeah.
So anyway, that is what led me to start wanting to build more friends because I was like, well, I have Ariel, I have Sunny, but neither of them live near me.
And that's
They,
hard.
yeah, they
Yeah.
live far away from me. And so I was like, okay, I need to start making friends here. And I had one other friend, Michelle, that I would spend time with, but we're no longer friends.
Yeah.
So, but what I did was I was like, okay, so I have to have 10 friends. And I was like, I have three. And then I was like, oh, so then I made a friend at yoga. And then I
Yeah.
would be at the gym and I would start like talking to other women and I would start conversations by just being like, oh, wow, I love your tattoo. Or like, hey, what exercise is that?
Yeah.
Or, um, hey, I just want you to know, like, watching you every day come in here is inspiring me when I come and work out. Anyway, and I was making friends that way at the gym.
Yeah.
A few of those friends that I thought were becoming my friends, I'm no longer friends with, but I think people sometimes come into your life for like a reason or a season
They
or
do.
something like that.
Yep.
Like one girl I met simply who I think came into my life just to introduce me to Eugene. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. People come and go for reasons.
Mhm. So anyway, so Gottman, I wanted to read a couple of these things. So in French or in romantic relationships, having a foundation of friendship is super, super important as well, right? Like you want to feel comfortable, you want to feel like you could be yourself.
Yep.
But let's see, what did he say? Okay. So he says, men in particular benefit from having their romantic partner also serve as their primary or closest friend.
Yep.
Women often have a broader social networks and are more likely to seek emotional support outside their romantic relationship. And I think this is one thing that's kind of interesting because even with a romantic partner, right, we want to be able to express to them how we feel, but oftentimes we'll see that, and this is just me maybe being a little stereotypical, but we're just talking amongst friends, and this podcast is really just for my friends, for us all to
Yeah.
relate and kind of connect. But I feel like, and let me know if this is your experience, but I feel like a lot of times when you tell your partner something that's like hurting your feelings, it's hard for them to validate or they get upset that you're upset. Like if you're upset with them, like if they hurt your feelings, they get upset with you for telling them that they hurt your feelings.
Yeah. I mean, if they're not emotionally mature. Yeah.
Well, I think even just not even emotionally mature, they just don't have
Yeah.
the skills to know how to handle, or it's their own culturally upbringing, right? Like,
Yes.
um, they just can't hear it or for it feels like they're not enough. It's kind of
Yeah.
telling whatever their own negative story is. But it
Yeah.
puts us in kind of a conundrum, right? Because it's like, well, I want to share
Does.
with you what's upsetting me, but then you get mad at me for sharing what's upsetting me, so then I'm not going to share. And then at some point in time, the relationship usually falls apart. And then the guy's like, "What? Why didn't you tell me what was
Yeah.
wrong?"
Exactly.
And you're like, "Well, I tried to tell you what was wrong, but then you got so upset with me for telling you what was wrong."
Yeah.
And it just kind of goes a little bit like that. So I think sometimes having the emotional support of friends allows you the space to process what you may not be able to process at home and also just to be validated because
Hmm.
sometimes in like guys like to fix, right? So you usually have to tell a guy like, hey, don't fix, just listen, right? And validate back. And then they're just like, okay. But women can like lean in and support and it's
Yeah.
just like a whole different kind of conversation. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think but I think also vice versa if we're thinking about it, men also need that soft place to fall. And I think that's why they
Yeah.
like talking to the
Yeah.
partner for life, as long as she's supportive. Because sometimes
Yeah.
you hear women be really mean back or use it as an opportunity to be a jerk or never let him be emotional or vulnerable. And that's not
Yeah,
good.
nobody likes that. Yeah, for sure. I think it's important, especially in this culture, to encourage men to have emotions and things like that because they haven't their entire lives. But that's of course a different podcast.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, okay, for stress and support, women generally process stress by turning to their social connection, friends or family, a concept often called tend and befriend. Men, however, are more likely to internalize stress or rely exclusively on their partner for emotional support. This dynamic can make friendship a more significant external coping mechanism for women. And it makes sense because think about it. Guys can't go around telling all of their friends, like, oh my God, I'm so stressed out. Because what happens immediately?
Yeah.
They get
Uh,
insulted, right?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, you're gonna cry.
Look it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, right. So,
Not helpful. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it makes sense. But then sometimes, like, I saw this TikTok video the other day, and it just like it made me so sad because this guy was in his backyard and he was wearing like a Jets hat or something like that. And his wife comes out and she's like videotaping him, and he is holding like a spool of wire. And he
Hmm.
says, I've had this wire for the last 40 years. and I've done like all of these projects with it, and there's only this much left. There's only a little bit of the wire left. And he's like getting emotional because, right,
Yeah.
he's reflecting on his whole life and this
Yep.
wire and what it's meant to him and what he's done, and also how it's like disappeared with time and how there's only a little bit left and he only has a little bit of life left. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was so
That's
emotional
heavy.
and
Yeah.
heavy. And she just goes, "Oh, I thought you were crying about that Jets hat." Like she just makes a rude joke about the hat.
That's not okay. Yeah, to me, like I'm already getting like emotionally invested, like with you just telling me
Yeah.
this. Like I get it, reflecting back and seeing how little is left and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he was like, "I'm done," and just like walked away. And it was like, men have, if they can't go to their partner, they have like no one to talk to,
It's
right?
true.
And
Yeah.
so I think that's why, I mean, because like I can go to you sobbing my eyes out
Oh yeah.
and be like, "This was the hardest day ever." And you're going to be like, "Oh my gosh, I love you. You're strong.
Yep.
You're going to get through it." You're
Yep.
not like,
Tell me all about it.
"Quit
Yep.
being a little bee, toughen up." You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to just like insult me because
Yep.
I'm having a bad day, right? But
Yeah.
so I think sometimes men just don't always have that place to be, which
Yeah.
is why I think, as Jared's saying, like find community, find people where you can express your
Because believe it or
stresses.
not, like, and I know a lot of men probably won't believe this, but there are places you can find understanding people, including other men that will be
Hmm.
understanding. I have a friend whose husband was looking all around for a supportive men's group in the area because I think he's part of like a countrywide one that like went on a trip or something, but they didn't have it like a chapter here. And all he found in our city was a bunch of churches with men's groups. And of course, nobody wants that, like that I know anyway, because that's not helpful to them. Most of us are running from the church. And so this guy was like, well, I'll make my own, like I'll make my own. And that is what he did. So now he has his own men's group that isn't affiliated with the church. And quite a few guys are like, they're grateful for it, because they need a place to land as well. So those places do exist. They're just probably less easy to find than perhaps make girls making friends,
Yeah, but it's
girlfriends.
even so hard for women to make friends with other women. It
It's
really is
true.
like it really is a challenge.
It's
So,
hard. Yeah.
especially if you've got to try to have like 10 friends.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, like that joke when people are like, "How did Jesus have 10 friends at like the Last Supper?" When they're like, "As an adult, how did he have 10 friends?"
Well,
That's the
I
real
used to
miracle.
wonder that. I used to like legitimately wonder that. And like, especially in my 20s, like I had very few friends. Some of that was intentional, some of that I was going through things, but like now I have sometimes it feels like a lot of friends. Like when they all they all end up contacting me on like the same day or something. I'm like, well, okay. Like I have more than I thought, and it's all due to getting involved in community. And I
That
just
can I
because
just
I've
pause for a second?
yeah.
I think it would be really helpful for anybody listening, any other friends who have like a little bit of that social anxiety or
Mhm.
just feeling like it's hard to go out. And also you recently just got diagnosed with autism, so that has its own obstacles to overcome. But just
Oh
I
yeah.
think everyone in general is an adult trying to make friends. So if you could share for a minute like how you moved through any of that fear or awkwardness, because you started after we went to Sedona and you went back home, you were like, "Okay, I'm going to start doing all of these things," and you became
Yep.
involved. So how can you just kind of share how you moved from the state of like fear and not moving and not doing anything to getting yourself involved? Like how did you transition and how has that supported your own growth?
Well, Sedona was so transformative. And I just, I'll always be grateful to you for that. And at that point, I was living in a new state, in a new city here, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't have anybody. And I was, my marriage was falling apart. It was just very isolating. Everything was, there was a lot of drama with my biological family. And so Sedona really opened my eyes to I need to start living and not just like wait around for things to get better. I can help them get better myself in at least in certain ways. And so going there with you and going through all of that inspired me. And I came back and I immediately was like, okay, what can I do? You know, and I started with I have the corgis. I started with that they were in training, like they were in dog classes. So I started making friends with their trainers, and they're now like family to me. Like they're incredible. So they were the first people to really welcome me to the area, and that wasn't too scary. I will say the dog the dog training world is full of a lot of, and I mean this very lovingly because I am one, weirdos and like people who don't maybe fit elsewhere. And so yeah, it was easy. Like they made it easy. There's a lot of neurodivergent people like that are into dog training. And so, I just take the corgis to things, and it just turned into some really close friendships that I will always appreciate. And of course, the corgis are gonna don't fight with each other now, please. But as for the rest, like, so that wasn't too scary. It was like, and it's because these people are so wonderful in that community. But then I knew I needed to keep going. Like I needed, it couldn't be just that community. I needed more. And so I quite literally did it scared. Um, it's something I've never done before. Like I wouldn't usually overcome the fear. I wouldn't move past it, but I did it scared, like terrified. And I was like, okay, like we're gonna start getting into stuff. And so my next step was like, okay, I'm really bad at I'm a perfectionist, basically. Like my family always really encourages perfection in everything, and I needed to work through that. And so I went to some folk school classes, which if you have this in your area, it's such a great resource. It's just like a bunch of old hippies teaching classes, and it's awesome. So I've done like a bunch of different kinds of felting and like dyeing with natural plants and like mixed media and watercolor. And I had to be first of all, it's a good way to meet people. Second of all, I had to accept that I was not good at a lot of a lot of these things, which is why I didn't ultimately ever do this in the first place. I was like, well, what's the point if it's going to be bad? That's not the point. The point is to go and learn something new and meet new people. And I came out of it with like a lot of enjoyable new hobbies and stuff, whether I'm good at them or not, and a lot of friends. And so then there was like another level, and I'm like, okay, I need to keep doing it scared. Okay. So I emailed like the local, we have a lot of theaters in my city. It's like a weirdly disproportionate amount of theaters. And I emailed the biggest one in town. Why that one, I don't know. I guess I just figured they'd have the most opportunities, maybe. And I was like, can I take a tour of your theater and like get to know, the place and sign up to help with shows? And they didn't get back to me for quite a while, but that's pretty typical. And then when they did, I got the tour and everything. I was scared. Like I didn't know anybody in this world. And I love theater. It's been a home for me like since I was 6 years old. But I've also had experiences with theaters that were they're clicky and unhealthy, like just like not fun places to be. And so I was really on edge. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if this is going to be a good idea or whatever. Um, and I just so happened the first show I signed up to work on was with some of the best people. Like half the cast is still in my life, like and some of the crew too. Uh, we just clicked, and honestly, some of my closest friends today in town, like I just spent New Year's with a bunch of them. And it was so rewarding. It was incredible, and I just did it scared, and I pushed through the fear and I was like, well, people are either going to like me or they're not. I'm just going to be as pleasant and appropriate as I can be, which sometimes it's hard to know, especially with autism. But I just did the best I could because that's all you can ever do. And I came out of it with this huge community now. And I'm like so grateful for it. It's incredible.
And I just want to pause there for a moment because I think what this also shows that unless people know you and know your story, that you had a huge like emotional injury around theater and
Yeah.
you took some time away and you let your heart
10
heal
years.
and
Mhm.
There was a time where you thought, I'll never do theater again because
Yep.
I never want to
You
feel
know
that
that.
pain again. I
Yep.
never want to experience that again. And then at some point in time, you were like, you know what? I'm not going to let that one experience define every experience and limit my life. I'm
Yep.
going to try again. I'm going to follow my curiosity. I'm going to go to these places. And I'm sure you notice because, like, every week I remember talking, you're like, I'm doing this new thing. I signed up for this other class. I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And you notice that even though you were scared, your confidence was building right alongside every week. Your confidence grew. You learn that even though it's scary, there's still magic in the unknown. You're
Hmm.
finding out more about yourself and you were able to let something that hurt you, then later let it also help heal you. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really, really beautiful thing that sometimes we forget. And that's why they say, get back up on the horse, right? Whatever hurt you, you got
It's
to get
true.
back up on so it doesn't,
Yeah.
so that injury doesn't win over through your life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not, it doesn't rule you. And it was ruling me for years. And I'm glad to say now it doesn't. And as far as theater specific, like I'm not even working as closely with that first theater anymore. Because like I said, there are a disproportionate amount of theaters in my town compared to how big it is. And I've gravitated to other ones that I like even better. And like, so having option and choice is a good thing as well, because I didn't have that with the theater where where I was hurt. So
Yeah.
it's good to have other places to gravitate to in that. But it just opened my world, and it keeps, like, we're talking about still like today, like a few months ago even, introducing me to other communities, introducing me to other people. Like I wouldn't know any of the people I know almost here in town now if it wasn't for theater. And that doesn't just mean work on shows. I also like started taking acting classes. One of my best friends teaches acting classes. She's incredible. And like, do I expect to be some kind of superstar? Not at all. I take these for fun, and I take these to meet people, and I've met the best people through them. So I think all of those are great ways to get involved in community. Don't do things because you think it's going to lead to, like, I'm going to be a star, or I'm going to be like a great artist or whatever. I mean, maybe you will, but like more often than not, you're just going to have a good time, and you're going to meet some awesome people.
Yeah. And I love that. It's like following your curiosity is where you
Yeah.
find the people that are like your people that
Yep.
have the same interests as you. Okay, friends, are you ready to take a step closer to your goals and truly embody your best self? My personalized recordings are designed just for you. Whether you're looking for a soothing meditation, transformative hypnosis, or empowering affirmations, I'll create a recording tailored to your unique needs. Whether you're working on confidence, embracing your femininity, or achieving a specific goal, these recordings are crafted to help you thrive and shine. Your investment is $125 for a custom recording that's uniquely yours, a tool you can return to again and again as you step into your power. Let's co-create a moment of calm, clarity, and inspiration in your life. Click the link in the description or visit beautifullychanged.com to learn more and order your custom recording today, because you deserve to feel supported on your journey. So, Gottman's findings align with broader research suggesting that men often experience greater health benefits from close relationships, particularly marriage or romantic partnerships, because they are less likely to form or maintain deep friendships outside of those. Women, by contrast, benefit from a wider network of friends, which can enhance their resilience and emotional health. Women tend to approach conflict within friendships with a focus on communication and emotional resolution, which strengthens bonds. Men may engage less frequently in emotional conflict with friends, leading to less depth, but also less emotional strain in male friendships. That's the
Hmm.
other thing I think is interesting too, is just like, well, this is something I kind of put down. I wanted to talk about like building deeper connection with friends because sometimes we feel like um or like assessing like friendship expectations because sometimes we want our friends to like agree with us on everything. But then it's like, how can that be a real friendship? Or even like when people say, "Oh, I never my person and I never have conflict." Well, that's not necessarily healthy. It just means somebody's not sharing how they feel about things. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like if you
Yeah.
never have a disagreement on anything in the entire world,
That's not normal. Yeah.
yeah, somebody's avoiding conflict and they're not expressing how they really feel about
Yeah.
something to avoid the conflict.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which it doesn't mean it's a safe environment, or it's more about how do you handle conflict? How can you have disagreements and come out on the other side? Like, and it's so cool too because for I'm just gonna use my friend Sunny again for an example because I just went to visit her in November and oh, I got frustrated because I was trying to explain something to her and I wasn't explaining it well enough, and she was like really confused. And I know I sounded irritated but I wasn't irritated at her. I was irritated at myself
Yeah.
because I couldn't explain what I was trying to explain. And I was like, oh, like, why could I not say this right? Um, and then I was like, later, I was like, hey, sorry for being snappy. And she's like, oh, that's okay. You don't have to apologize. And I was like, well, I do have to apologize because I was being snappy. But she was just like,
Yeah.
no big deal. But I was like, oh. And there's been times too where I'm somebody who I used to avoid conflict with friends all the time, or I would just always agree with my friends and
Hmm.
being like the people pleaser. But it wasn't actually being like a nice person because then I would feel like resentment and all
Yep.
of these things. And they weren't like true, healthy friendships because I was just going along with what everybody else said, never expressing what I wanted or I liked or whatever, because I wanted
All
to,
that does is build resentment.
yeah, because I just wanted to have people in my life, I just wanted to be loved. And
Yeah.
at that time, I didn't realize I could have my own opinions and still be loved. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's all a
Yes.
journey. Um,
Yes.
but I just think sometimes our expectations for our friends, because I think that's something I used to struggle with by not realizing these other people who had really close families didn't put their importance on my friendship as much as I was putting on their friendship.
Yes.
And I think that in itself can cause a lot of conflict.
It's
So
hard.
what you said earlier about like communicating it. So can you give an example of like how you've communicated that to a friend before?
I think it's something that uh I don't mean I don't lead with, but like I'm pretty transparent about it. When I make a friend, people know my background very immediately. And that's my personal preference. But I like to get out of the way,
But what do you say? What do you say?
what do I say? Well, basically I'll let them know, I don't have much of a relationship with my family, or at least an honest relationship. They're all still very much a part of the church. Um, I do have my brother and stuff, but the rest of my family really, like it's kind of a arm's length situation. Um, and so I'm very like obvious. I tell them like my friends, my community, they're my family, like so that I'm pretty upfront of like I don't have what you have, like as or if they have that, I don't have what you have. So they know, and
But
so
okay, so I guess like how do you then ask for like what does that mean to you? What are you telling them with that? Are you saying so when I call you, I really need you to answer or like what are you saying? Like what
I'm saying
expectations are
like
behind that?
my community really is my family. My friends really do become my family. And I mean that's okay. Like if friends don't want like that deep of a connection, then I just won't be as close to them. But most of them have been like super supportive and like I think on Christmas I was like, well, like I don't have anywhere to go. I'm just house sitting and pet sitting for my friend, and I mentioned it to my other friend, and I said, but I'm used to it. I holidays since my mom died are just like I've spent holidays with so many different people's families. It's unbelievable. Like it's just I never know where I'm going or what I'm doing, and so it's kind of stressful. And she immediately was like, oh yeah, she's like, come spend Christmas with my family. She's like, we're going to the movies, and then afterwards we're going home and playing games. And she's like, and you can be, you're welcome to be a part of it. And sure enough, that is what I did. I spent the holiday with her family. So most people I've found, at least in my experience, are pretty great about it, especially around the holidays. Like if you need a place to go, um, and we'll include you. And so I don't know. I don't know if that like answers your question,
Yeah, it
but
does. I think it's also like
okay.
that's a great way because some people will isolate themselves in the holiday because they don't want to be a burden or they
Hmm.
don't want to come in, or it's hard for them to watch other people have close family when they
It
don't.
is. Yeah, it
So
is.
I think all that. I think another thing you do that's good is like when your family came to visit, you were like, "Hey, can you text me in the morning and kind of like hype me up for the day?" And
Yep.
so you kind of like ask your friends for what you need, and I think
Mhm.
that's really, really helpful. Um, I'm learning to do that now.
Yeah.
For the first time in my life this last year, I have actually said when I'm having a bad day or have reached out to friends for support.
Yeah.
Before that, you've never heard me ever have a bad day ever. You've never heard
I
me.
know. Like I was like, Steph is the most happy, positive person I've ever met in my life. Not that that's bad, but it was like, yeah, you definitely were just like, you did not open up that way.
Yeah, well, I feel like I still really am really happy and
You
cheerful.
are. I mean,
I
that is your
just,
natural default, like to be fair. But like
yeah,
that's so true that I've noticed over the past year that you're now finally being like, "Hey, this is a hard day." And I'm like, "I like that. I like that you're telling me that because I feel like friendship can't be as deep if you don't, share everything like that with your friends. If you don't say, "Hey,
yeah,
I'm having a hard day," you know?
yeah. Well, I feel like I'd always been like a really good friend for other people, but I never let anybody be a good friend to me.
Yeah.
Because couple times when I have opened up to people and just their responses have been so disappointing, I was like, I think I'm just not going to tell anybody how I'm feeling.
That's
Because,
hard, and it sucks, like, when people
yeah,
are like that. It's so hard and so discouraging, and I don't know what the different I think different communities also have different things because, back when I was living in Eastern Montana, more often than not, that's the response I would get. Like, I would get, like, a lukewarm response or kinda like people like, "Okay," and, I've just noticed here, since I moved here, it got better when I moved to North Dakota briefly, and then it's incredible now that I live in Minnesota. And it also it depends on what community, like I
yeah.
can't tell you what a sports community would like reply like, but I will say in the theater and like fine arts community, the dog training community, people are really very good with if you want to open up, if you want to say, "Hey, I'm having a bad day," things like that. People tend to be more real. So you also have to find like the right place.
Yeah, I think you definitely. So what I've done is I have like different categories for my friends. I have a few
Yeah.
friends who I can tell like who I can talk to, and then I have other friends that I just don't talk to. Or
Okay.
I just like sprinkle like a little bit, or like some friends are just my fun friends. We just go out and we just have fun and
Yeah.
that's it. And then I have other friends where I'm like, I thought I was so sad I was gonna die. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I can talk to. And then
Yeah.
yeah, and then a little bit in between. Okay, so I kind of put down like a little bit of a list between why friendships are very important to some people and why they could be less important to others. So I kind of just want to talk about this. Just interrupt and share whenever you're something. So why they can be very important to some people. So emotional support.
Hmm.
Friendships provide a safe space to share feelings, seek advice, and find comfort. For some, this emotional connection is vital for their well-being.
Hmm.
Sense of belonging. Humans are social creatures. People who place high importance on friendships often see them as a way to feel connected and understood. And usually, if you don't have close family, you don't feel there's a place to belong and you want a place to be included. You want a
Yeah.
place to belong. You want a place to feel like I'm safe to be me, that I'm loved, that I'm missed, that
Yeah.
I'm cared about.
Yeah.
Shared identity. In some cultures or communities, friendships are central to one's social life and identity. People may lean on friends more if they lack strong familial bonds or if their friends share unique experiences. So, like being part of the LGBTQ plus community or like the theater community or the spiritual community, anything like that.
Yep.
I used to love my yoga studio because I felt so connected, but I feel like now it's a really judgy place since like I'm going through a divorce. I feel like it's just judgment there now. So like once my membership runs out, I don't think I'm going to renew, even though I love one of the instructors because she's helped me progress so much. But
Yeah.
it used to be a place where it was part of a community, and now they're kind of like excluding me, which is
Well,
when you also have to identify
yeah.
when do I pivot?
Yeah.
When is something no longer feel good? And then I
Yeah.
have to give myself permission to pivot. What were you
Like
gonna say?
how, yeah, then that's so important. Like, how hard should I work to keep this, or should I turn away? And big life things like divorce do define like who's going to be there for you and who's not. And I found ultimately, like, if they're not, you don't need them. And I know that's easier said than accepted, but it's true. Like, you're better off with people who are going to love you no matter what.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, so.
Yeah, because I'm like, I'm sure you have stories in your own life that, like no one can go, like everyone can judge everybody for something. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then like personality, extroverts and socially oriented individuals often derive energy and happiness from maintaining close relationships. But I would also say for me, I'm kind of the ambivert, right? I'm a little bit of introvert and extroverted. And for me, I love to have friendships where I can have like a deep conversation.
Yep.
So if I'm not able to have like a deep conversation with at least a couple people in my life, I feel like I'm malnourished, if that makes
That's
sense.
how I feel too. I mean, that's exactly how I feel. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a really good, very good way to put that. Malnourished.
Yes. And I've also noticed too, so like when I'm allowing myself to be more vulnerable, my friends that have been guarded and not as vulnerable in general have also become more vulnerable. And it's
Yes,
like we
I
can just,
found that is very true. I found that to
yeah,
be true all the time. Like in my interactions with people, the more open and vulnerable I am with them, most of the time they will respond in kind.
yeah, yeah. And then you just have like a deeper friendship.
Yeah.
Life stage or circumstances. At certain stages, like young adulthood or retirement, friendships may play a bigger role in one's life. For example, those without a partner or children might rely more on friends for support and connection.
hmm
So they're not so lonely, you know? And this is why, so is there anything you would add to why friendships are very important to some people? Anything that wasn't on that list?
I think it's a good list. And I just think it's important to remember that there are, and there's always going to be naturally different levels of friendship that you have with people, and that they fluctuate. I think maybe like here it might be important to talk about Strawberry Friends,
Oh.
which started with you, and reading Unmasking Autism by Devin Price.
Hmm.
It was an autistic person that put a strawberry by people's contact information in their phone who they knew they could turn to in any circumstance, basically. Like I'm paraphrasing, but I found that to be so helpful,
Yeah.
because so I will go through my phone, I will put strawberries by certain people's names who I know I can turn to them, and like there's one in front of your name, and some people, uh and it's very sad when I have to go in and be like, there's not a strawberry there anymore,
Mm,
and take it out. It doesn't mean like the relationship is over, but it's just, maybe something happened, or maybe we just drifted. But I think it's always good to have like those contacts in your phone, and whatever emoji you want to use, whatever system you want to use. But I really like the strawberry one, from the
yeah,
book.
I do
And
too. And I think
yeah,
to further that point for the strawberry, it's a way to signal to somebody who's autistic or neurodivergent, like this is the person you want to invest in. So when they
yes,
text you, text them back. When they
yes,
call them back. And if they don't
hmm
have a strawberry, maybe you don't prioritize that relationship as much because
yeah,
sometimes, not everybody, but some people who are neurodivergent or autistic can sometimes have a hard time knowing who the real friends are and who aren't, and who to count on and who not to count on. And
yep.
so it's like a sorting system that helps you identify, oh, these are the people to invest my energy into.
That's a
And
great way to put it. Yep.
yeah,
Because and I think this is another good point. Friendships are work. Like and I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's just they are. They take work just like anything else. You have to maintain them. And some people they'll complain they don't have friends, but then they don't reach out, or they let relationships drift, and they're just, they're not around as much. And so that's not going to help your case. Like for me, it's a very intentional thing that I will do. I will go through my contacts, like I'll go through my text messages and be like, who haven't I texted lately,
mhm,
and just shoot them a text, just like anything, like, hey, it's been a while, or like, hey, thinking of you, or how are you, or whatever. And I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's very well received,
mhm.
and that. And of course, if it wasn't well received, it would just be in the form of they didn't text me back, but like no one's gonna like yell at you for for trying to keep in touch. And
Yeah.
it's just that easy of like, hey, how's it going, just like a text out to people every once in a while. And that goes back to not isolating yourself. So friendships take work, like they really really do, and maintaining a community takes work. Like you have to put the work in, and it's so worth it. Like if you
Yes.
see it in action. Like, you know about the fire at my friend's house, that happened a few weeks back. It was a total loss, and they lost their pets and all of this stuff. And it was, I mean, it's horrifically sad. There's things that none of us can do and replace and say, but the community turned out in a huge way for these people. Just like, around every turn, around every corner, every turn, their community has been there. And this is the dog training community I'm talking about, which is very heavily LGBTQ as well. Just the support there is incredible. And it's another good example of like chosen family versus blood family, because the people who lost everything in the fire, they have family. Not they're either not super involved, or they don't approve of like who these people are. Only one parent is really left in their lives.
Mm.
And so while their blood family could make a huge difference if they wanted to, they're quite wealthy, they've chosen not to. And instead, it's the community who has come around and just rallied around these people in a huge and meaningful way. Just like, it is just incredible to see. Um, and they're showing up and doing more than the blood family ever will do. So it's another reason why it's just so important to have friends and community and put in the work, because when you need help, that generally that work you've put in comes back tenfold.
Hmm. And I think it's also like, if you think about a romantic partnership, you have to put time, energy,
Yeah.
effort,
Mhm.
all of that stuff. You have to cultivate and nurture that relationship for it to last a lifetime.
Yeah.
And same with friendships, the ones that you want to keep. It's like flossing your teeth, right? Only floss the ones you want to keep,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So hopefully you know what I mean? So it's also
Yeah.
like nourish your friendships as well. And that's why they can also hurt so bad when they end,
Yes. Mhm.
because it's like it really is a relationship that mattered to you, and it can be so hurtful when they end. And so also, okay, so I really want to talk about, because I think this is important for some of us who value our friendships so much, to just kind of look at the other side, why friendships may be less important to others.
Yeah.
And it could be self-sufficiency. So some people prefer to rely on themselves or feel fulfilled without frequent social interaction. This can be tied to personality traits like introversion or independence, or it could even be their own traumas, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe they're super avoidant and they're like, I don't like to get that close to people. So when I get
Yeah.
close, I distance. Or it could even be because you're an Aquarius, and Aquarius is, they sometimes just like to have their own little, they're just like, there's nothing's wrong. They're just like disappeared into their own world
Yep.
for a minute, and
Yep.
they
I
like
just need a
pop,
break.
yeah, and they
Yeah.
pop back out and they're like, hey, what's going on? And I'm doing
Yep.
this, and it's nothing personal. It's just a personality trait, you know?
Yep.
I know I figured it'd be kind of fun to include people's signs, just because this is like for my friends and like people like
Right.
me. So
Oh, and I love the Zodiac. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of fun to know. Like, also we should do like what people's human designs are too. That'd be super fun.
Love
Do
human design.
you remember your
Yes.
human design?
Isn't it a number?
Yeah, I could look it up. I have it on
I was
my
gonna
phone
say
really
you
quick.
have it. Yeah, and it was just like so freakily accurate. Like, it was just unbelievable.
I know I have everyone in my life. I have their human design.
I love that. That's very Steph. Like, that's a
Yes.
very Steph thing to do.
It's so I know how to be a better friend to you. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So you're a manifesting generator with sacral authority, and you're a 4/6, the regal authority figure.
Okay. Yeah. I
Okay.
remember like when you told me that in Sedona, I was like, wow, okay, like that sounds fancy.
Like when we read through them. Okay.
Yeah.
So other things, okay, so focus on other priorities. Friendships might take a backseat during demanding life phases, such as pursuing a career, raising a family, or managing personal challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Past experiences, negative past experiences such as betrayal or rejection can make people wary of investing heavily in friendships. Very
Yeah.
true.
Very
Very
true. Yeah.
true. Cultural norms. In some cultures, familial relationships or romantic partnerships are considered more central than friendships.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like some people, like they don't want to open up to their friends. That's personal. I'm not going to air out my dirty laundry, stuff like that.
It's true. Yeah. There's a wall there.
Hmm. Different needs for connection. People vary in their social needs. Some require frequent and deep interactions, while others feel satisfied with fewer or more casual relationships. Like I know some people who are like, oh, my closest friends, I only talk to like once a year. Like that would never work for me. Like if you're going to
Me
be like
either.
a close friend, like
Yeah.
You need to know what's going on in my life. Like, yeah, you can be a casual friend and I can just like, and we could like, you could be like, hey, I'm in town. You want to grab dinner? Heck
Yeah.
yes. But you're not going to know what's going on in my life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's harder like if you don't see them. I mean, I have friends like maybe from way back, like because if they're my friends from way back, this is going to be the case where we can not talk and then sit down and it feels like we haven't been apart like
Yeah.
for a while. But on the whole, if you're going to be my friend and know me in any meaningful way, you got to keep in touch.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
funny too, because growing up, one of my friends moved away. Her name was Lindsay, and we wrote letters to each other for like 8 years, something
Yeah.
like that, 7 years. Like we kept our friendship. We would do like um record voice tapes for each
Oh,
other and send them back and forth. We would put music on the tapes,
that's
write
so sweet.
letters, and that's also what I did with my grandma. So I would say my closest family member is my grandma
Okay, yeah.
and the one who I went to Spain with, and we had like
Yeah.
the most amazing time. And that actually strengthened our connection so much. I think going on trips with friends is like
Oh, you get a new
so,
bond. Yep.
yeah, because like I feel like our Sedona trip and our like Coldplay
Oh
concert
my God.
was like,
Oh my God. Both
yeah,
like spiritual experiences almost. Like we just had the
yeah,
best time.
yeah. I highly recommend if you have a really good friend, go on trips together because it just like,
Oh, I mean, if you have the financial resources, absolutely. And even if you don't, like do a day around town together,
mhm,
like that kind of a thing. There's always something to do, like no matter where.
yeah,
Trust me, I can say that. And you know I can say that because I've lived in the middle of nowhere before and found
yes,
things to do.
yes. But you could like be a tourist in your own town.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to just kind of talk about, so finding balance between your friendships. So neither perspective is better. It's about understanding and respecting individual differences. For those who value friendships highly, the key is finding friends who share similar priorities. For those who don't prioritize friendships, it's important to ensure they're still cultivating meaningful connections, even if fewer or less intense. So I think sometimes like a little combination is good so you don't burn yourself out
Oh yeah.
trying to be like super friend to everyone, but then
You can't. Like
yeah,
that's just the thing is you can't.
yes,
And
yeah,
I know that. Like I've tried.
yeah, and it's just yeah, it's because you also want some friends who are receptive and show up the way you show up. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is some tips on how you can build deeper connection with friends. So chime in whenever you want to or like add anything. So if you're seeking a deeper connection with your friends, try the following. So, active listening. Focus on truly hearing them without interrupting, reflecting back what they say to show your understanding. So, a lot of times we want to share like a story too, but first ask them like a follow-up question. Ask them a couple things about what they just
Yeah.
shared with you, and then share your own
Yeah.
story, your own experience. But I think that's super, super important
And
because,
it is, but let me interject. If you do have autism, this is a thing with us. Like if you're neurodivergent, you'll tell a story and then they'll tell a story back, and then you'll tell a story and they'll tell a story back, like with very little questions or input, like in between, because that's how we're like we acknowledge, you see, I know what you're talking about. And so there are other ways people do that. So if you have a neurodivergent friend, please bear with us if we respond to your story with a story, because that's what we're trying to do. Although what you're saying, Steph, is very important, like active listening, mirroring back what they say so they know you hear them. All of that is very important. It's not always going to happen when you have a neurodivergent friend.
well, I think it very happens with very, very seldom people. And so it's an actual skill for
Yes.
anybody to learn, neurodivergent or not, to
Yep.
ask a follow-up question.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't even realize to do that. And so
Yeah.
that's just something you can do to deepen the connection is to
Mm-hmm.
practice follow-up questions. I'm really, really good at that, but that's because I've practiced it for like 30 years, you know?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
um, so that
Same. I'm only getting better at it. Like as I get older. Yeah,
that's
and
all we
because
can do.
trust me, not always been great at it.
That's all we can do.
Yeah.
And then we talked about vulnerability. So share your feelings, experiences, or struggles to foster
Hmm.
trust and intimacy. And maybe don't do that with everyone, just your strawberry friends or the ones that you want to
Yeah.
build a deeper connection with.
Yep.
Quality time, which you mentioned, spend meaningful time together doing activities you both enjoy.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of funny because like for dates, um, Keone and I, before we had Makayo, we used to be like, okay, You pick what we're going to do this date, and then we'd go back and forth, and we would pick like what I liked or what he liked, or for each other what we both liked. And so we got to try a variety of things. And I think sometimes with friendships, it's even good to do that too. Like, hey, I'm going to pick you up on Friday, wear this, we're going to go do this cool thing.
Yes.
Like it's almost like you're dating your friend too, but you're not. You're just putting in quality time. But think about it like that. Like I have to put in the time, the quality time with
Yes.
them.
It
And like,
is. It's just with like the romance taken out, but
yeah.
like in a way. And here's where again I have to like interject for neurodivergent people because again, this has been me. Sometimes you think I'm not doing that, like that's just something that doesn't interest me, and I mean that's fine and you can do that with a lot of things, but just try like every once in a while, just try something new even if you know you're not going to like it,
Hmm.
because I've done that, like do I always want to do the different things that my friend, no, like I do not like I love my friend that invited me to see the movie on Christmas, but did I want to see the movie that was chosen? Not really. Like I wasn't interested, but I went along because I wanted to be a part of things and I just wanted to get in the groove of their day. So it could be as simple as I'm going to see this movie even though I'm not interested. It could be as complicated as I am in no way interested in snowshoeing, but you are. So I'm going to try this. And then if I've given it a good try, I probably am not going to do it again if I don't like it. So it is really important to still try things even if you think you don't like them, like for your friend's
Yeah.
sake. Hmm.
Yeah, that is good. And then you could be like, and then you have a great memory anyway. And my son, like, he's autistic, right? So I know I'm always going over that with him because he's always
Yeah.
like, nope, don't want to do it. And I'm like, and then,
Yep.
but sometimes he'll even compromise and he'll be like, okay, I'll try it. Because
Yep.
he'll be like, well, I want you to do this with me. So I'll do this for you. Like,
Yep. It's all
or
about empathy. Like it's all about empathy and what others might like and what other because it's not all about you, you
yeah.
know?
And you never know, you could be pleasantly surprised.
Sometimes I have been. That's the thing. And that's why like I advocate for it because sometimes I'm like, okay, like I genuinely liked that and I didn't expect it.
And I would also say, I know we're talking about friendships, but I've also noticed, like romantic relationship wise, in my marriage, there was so many things I would never do because I either didn't feel emotionally safe to do it or I was just too scared to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it limited the depths of our relationship. Like for something so simple, I would not go jet skiing on the ocean. That seemed too scary to me. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to get eaten by a shark. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
don't want to do it. And I was
I
like,
mean valid, but yeah.
and I was very rigid about it, right? I was like, I'm not doing it. But then Eugene, Sunny, and the guy she was dating at the time, and I went to Mexico and they wanted to go jet skiing in the ocean. And I was like, uh, oh my God, normally I would never do this. But I was like, I have to do things differently
You do.
because I want a different outcome. So I was like,
Yep.
okay. And I was like, okay, I will go jet skiing. I'm gonna be scared. So take a few
Do
minutes
it
before you
scared.
start. Yeah, I was like,
Yep.
take a few minutes before. So I expressed what I needed. Take a
Hmm.
few minutes before you start going really fast. And please don't dip me because I'm so scared to fall into the ocean. And this is my first time doing
Yeah.
this. So, and
Yeah.
and it was a great experience. And it was so much fun. And I was scared and I was so proud of myself for doing it. And then
Yeah.
and that's how things keep going is like I'm like even if something's scary, I'm going to do it anyway because I want a different outcome than I had before. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. Okay, so be supportive, show up for them in moments of joy and hardship. Small gestures like checking in can mean a lot. Like every time like you checked in on me this last year or I've checked in on you, it just
Yep.
means so much to know like, hey, are you
Hey,
okay today?
somebody's thinking of me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I matter to somebody. And I think
Yes.
that's important.
And celebrate them, acknowledging their achievements and unique qualities, make them feel appreciated. I think that's so huge because all of us are doing something. And so celebrating instead of like making them feel like, I don't know, what they're doing is easy or insignificant or it doesn't
Oh,
matter.
that's
Yeah,
not
or
friendship.
like
And
the
also, I feel like
backhanded
you're,
compliments.
yeah, I feel like you're like the best at doing this. Like you're such a great cheerleader, like for
Oh,
your friends and acknowledging, I knew you could do it. Oh, that was great and everything. Like you're really good at that, and you've actually taught me to be better at that as
oh.
well. Be a cheerleader in your friends' lives.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, it means so much because like when people are rooting for you versus giving you backhanded compliments or
God, yeah, because those aren't real
dismissing
friends.
you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or like limiting you or dismissing you or like
yeah,
not acknowledging your greatness. I think we all have something that we're really good at, and to have our friends
yeah,
acknowledge that feels really good.
yep.
Set clear boundaries. So healthy boundaries create mutual respect, fostering a stronger relationship, which I think is what you were talking about earlier. So it's even if it's like, hey, I'm exhausted now. I'm not going to be available this weekend. I still love
Yep.
you. I'm just not available.
Yep.
Consistency, regular communication, even a quick message helps maintain the bond. Ask thoughtful questions, go beyond surface level topics to understand their lives, dreams, and struggles. Now, what I have found has been so, so helpful is to get those questions, those question boxes, those question games. And like even
I
uh
love those.
yeah, and just ask each other questions and get to know each other. Like everybody loves those. They're so beneficial. They're going to ask things that you might not even think about. They take the conversation somewhere. You get to know people so much better. So I
It's true. And can I put a recommend in here? There is I mean, I guess it's called a game. To me, technically, it isn't a game, but one of my friends in theater uses it in her like acting classes, but just like also with her family at gatherings stuff. It's called Huga. And
okay.
it is just a whole pack of cards with very thought-provoking questions on them. And I love that kind of thing. It's also what I tell any significant other that I have, or like, I'm like, get ready because I have all the questions for you. Like
What's it what's
huh?
the game called? Huga?
Yeah, Huga. It's like a
Spell it?
and I think it's H um it's a Scandinavian word. I know that means it's like an aesthetic in the winter, like
Okay.
cozy or whatever. I think it's Hygge, maybe.
Okay.
Um, but I'm sure anyone who listens to this is probably screaming the correct pronunciation and the correct spelling. I mean, but okay, here we go. Huga means to enjoy.
Oh, cute.
And so yeah, it is Hygge. And it's Danish, Norwegian, cozy like wintertime feelings. But that is the
Aw.
game. And again, not it's not actually a game, but like great thought-provoking questions. It's called the Huga game. Cozy conversation and pleasant company.
Oh, okay.
So
I love that.
highly recommend. I love it. It's on my wish list, like to have it because I think everyone should have that like around their house.
Yeah, I love the question games. And even for like, okay, so I love asking questions. And that is
Mhm.
something I've asked of Eugene. I said, hey, I like us to ask like more questions to have deeper conversation. And so,
Yeah.
like, whenever we
Mhm.
drive somewhere, like, we're going to go to Vegas this next week. And so I just keep a pack of cards and I drive. And he just, because he can read while driving, I can't, I get motion sickness. So he'll just ask the questions and he'll ask for him, and then he'll ask for me. And so he goes along with it and asks like all the questions, and it's so fun. I love it.
I love
Okay.
it too. That is such a fun activity.
So, assessing friendship expectations. So, determine if your expectations for friendship are realistic. I just wanted to go over these really quick.
That's
So,
important.
reflect on, oh my gosh, I'm going to mess up this word. Reciprocating, but
Yeah.
reciprocity.
Reciprocity.
There we go.
Yeah.
Say it again.
Reciprocity.
There we go. Are you expecting more than you're giving? Friendships thrive on balance. So, also, if you're somebody who gives a lot, I think sometimes it's important to tell your friends that, because sometimes we want to, we'll feel like we can never give back as much or it feels too unbalanced. But like if you're my friend, I'm a huge giver. Everybody
Oh,
knows that. Like
same. Yeah.
especially if
Hmm.
you live near me and I can just like give you a bunch of stuff in person. But
Right.
sometimes that's uncomfortable for people, but I like giving is part of my living. But what I've been learning is how to receive back.
That's so hard. And I have a good example of that lately that's happened to me. Like, my friend, again, through the theater, she's the one I spent Christmas with. She's had a really hard couple of months, including like prolonged sickness and stuff. And so I would just drop off food at her house. Like, I've
Aw.
done that quite a few times now. You know, I love to cook. And she said last, I think it was the last time I saw her, she was like, "You're like an Italian grandmother. Like, you just keep feeding me." And I'm like, yeah, I just do that like for people I love and that are going through a hard time, and I know they appreciate it. And so recently I was telling her, yeah, like I'm going to be, and as you know, like this will probably be another podcast. I'm going to be going through ketamine therapy, and I need rides because you're not supposed to drive to it. And you know, I'm having trouble finding rides, but I wasn't asking her. Like I was just telling her, yeah, like I need to start planning this and everything. She goes, "What? Why aren't you asking me?" And I was like, oh, I don't want to like interrupt your day or anything. Like she's a very busy person. Like very like she is always going. And she's like, I want to help you. You know, like I want to help you. Give me the dates where you need a ride and like I will do my best. And sure enough, she's taking half the days that I need a ride and driving me around and like just all the things. And that was really hard for me to accept.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have no problem being the person giving things to others, but when it's my turn to receive things, that's really hard. And I mean, I think that goes back to like childhood wounds or, you know, whatever. Maybe your family like made you out to like, I don't know. Like in my case, it's a lot of different reasons, but it can be hard, but I think it is important like to receive back. And on
Yeah.
on a bigger scale, like my friends who had their house burned down, uh, they have had to receive in like it's almost like they're in shock. They've gotten so much in return, to a point where like you don't know what to say. And,
Yeah.
but it's important to do that. Like when you have nothing like they do at this point, people want to help. Like I want to help them. I know that. And everybody wants to do whatever they can. But I will acknowledge it's really hard for some of us to receive instead of give.
Yeah. And I think also with that, it doesn't, and you've given perfect examples of this, that the receptivity doesn't have to be the exact same thing. Like you
No.
cooking meals doesn't mean receiving meals. It means just like
Yeah.
making sure there's a give and a take, there's a flow there, that you're not always giving, they're not always taking, that they
Yeah.
call you to, that they invite you out to, that they want you to be included and feel loved and all that sort of
Yes.
stuff, that it's not you just putting in all the work,
Exactly.
that they're both people are investing into the friendship.
Exactly.
And then understanding individual needs. Some people may not need frequent contact to feel connected, and then not taking that personal and just seeing it
Yep.
like, oh, okay, I still matter to you. And sometimes I'll ask that, like, hey, are you mad at me? You know, I check in a lot, like, I haven't heard from you in a
Right.
while. Are you mad at me? Like, because it matters. I don't want people to be mad at me, but also if I did upset
Same.
you,
Yeah. And I
I want to
always
work
think
it
everyone's
out, you
mad at
know, like
me.
I want to know so I know not to do it again.
Exactly. Same. I want to learn from like whatever happens.
Yes, yes. Communicate openly. Share what you're looking for in friendship and ask them how they feel, which you mentioned that earlier too. Be patient. Friendships deepen over time, so give them room to grow naturally. I think it's some sort of statistic, and I may have the number wrong, but I think it's like in order for a friendship to be really, real, like a really close friendship, you need to invest 200 hours into each other. And
Yeah.
so if you're like at hour 10, your friendship's probably not going to be as deep as with somebody that you've spent 500 hours with, you know?
Yeah.
Recognize limits. No one friend can meet all your emotional needs. It's healthy to have a diverse social circle. So I like that.
Yes.
And then I
Hmm.
thought this would be really helpful for those of us who just need a little extra, maybe help on being able to tell if somebody likes us or not, if you're like neurodivergent or you're just like, I don't know, tell me some social cues. So I
Right.
think body language is so important to know and to see. So these are some body language cues to tell if someone likes you. Okay. So if they have an open posture, their body is relaxed and turned towards you, indicating engagement.
Yeah.
Um, Also, just so you know, too, like if you're out trying to make friends, notice how people's toes, how their feet are pointed. So, like, let's say you and I are talking together. If we didn't want anyone else to join our conversation, our feet will be pointing just to each other.
Yeah.
If we were okay with somebody else joining our conversation, we might have one foot open
Yeah.
and one foot pointed to each other. And so if you notice people's feet and one's open, they're okay with you joining the conversation. They'll be more welcoming, they'll be more pleasant. If both of their feet are facing each other and you try joining, they might be like, what? Why are you joining us right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
It might feel a little less
Private
welcoming.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Eye contact. So frequent, warm, and sustained eye contact shows interest and connection. Smiling, genuine smiles, crinkling around the eyes reflect warmth and affection.
Hmm.
So mirroring, they subtly mimic your gestures, tone, or expression, signaling rapport. Leaning in. Now this is more of, I think, women more
Yeah.
often will lean in. Um, Guys, I think, and I think when guys are just like, yeah, tell me more, they're, they can like
Yeah.
open up
They
or
spread out. Yeah.
yeah, but women will lean in. So that physical closeness or leaning in during conversation shows attentiveness.
Hmm.
Touch, like casual touches, like a pat on the back or touch on the arm, can indicate comfort or affection. Again, that's more, I think women more do that. Men are probably a little bit like, ah, don't touch anyone, you know.
Yeah.
Relaxed movements, they avoid defensive postures like crossed arms or turning away. But also just know sometimes men will cross their arms, not because they're closed off, but because their arms are heavy and they're just like, woo, I need to rest my arms for a minute.
Yeah.
So it's kind of more of like when you think downward dog in yoga is a rest pose, this is kind of a rest pose
Oh,
sometimes.
that's a good example. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also important, like while you're reading through these, to caveat that these are mainly neurotypical things. Like neurotypical people will give most of these tells.
Mhm.
So you can generally count on them for neurotypical people. For neurodivergent people, you're not going to get the eye contact 9 times out of 10. You know, there are things that aren't going to fit on this list. Like I also cross my arms a lot, and I've had to be really conscious of that learning body language because I realize people think you're kind of pulling away from them. Whereas I'm just kind of hugging myself, like applying pressure to myself because that's just like an autistic thing. And I don't mean it in a negative way. So I think a lot of these like are great and they apply to neurotypical people. But if you got to think a little differently, like when you're talking to someone neurodivergent.
Well, I think neurodivergent people, if they're not interested in you or they don't like talking to you, they're not even going to engage with you very much. So I think that's a huge giveaway. Like, unless they're
Unless you're
masking,
high masking like me.
yeah, unless they're masking, that's funny because we
Yeah.
both said that at the same time.
Yeah.
So if they're masking, they'll try to engage with you if they don't like you, but you can still see
It's hard.
that they're
Yeah.
not. But if they're not masking, a neurodivergent person
Oh,
isn't going
just walk
to,
away. Yeah.
not going to invest the energy in you if they don't like you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless their
That's
mom is like, say something, say
yeah.
hi, say thank you, right? Like
And
doing
I know
that.
you're speaking from experience with that.
Yes. So otherwise, if someone's neurodivergent, they're not going to sit there and engage with you longer, or they're going to disagree with you. They're going to just be themselves. They're not going to be like, and they could even like having the conversation, but when they're done, they're done. And
Yes.
they'll even be like, I'm done talking to you now.
They will tell
So,
you that. And see, I personally, I mean, of course, I love that, you know, because
yeah.
I feel like it's the most practical, but I also have autism. So I know not every neurotypical person appreciates the bluntness.
Yes. Yeah. But I just know my son is just like, and I'm done.
Yep. Yep.
And I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Or he'll be like, I'm getting irritated. Stop asking me
Yeah,
questions.
he will literally. Yeah, I've seen him like say
Yeah.
these things. It's.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
So I think a lot of times with neurodivergence, you're just yeah, you're gonna know they're done. If
Yeah.
they want to talk to you, they're gonna talk to you. So I think that's like, but body language in general, if you are interested in somebody though, you're gonna look at them and talk to them. You
Yeah.
know, if you like your friends, you're gonna lean in a little bit and talk. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna do those things. You might not make as much eye contact or stuff like that, but you will because you're trained in the masking to do that. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean? But if
Hmm.
you don't like somebody, you don't hang around and talk to them
Yeah.
longer than necessary. Your feet will probably be like, and I'm trying to get out of here.
It's
Um,
true.
yeah. So there is some with that I think is important to just know in general. Because if somebody's smiling, they're enjoying your conversation, stuff like that. Okay,
Hmm.
so is there anything we didn't touch on that you think would be important to talk about?
In friendships,
Yes.
um, I don't know. I just think that there's probably a good continuation off this conversation of what it means to build your community outside your biological family and like why that's important. And we've discussed kind of like how to do that here. But I think there's like a good continuation on that topic. Maybe we could do another time because it's important. I think more people now than ever are experiencing estrangement from their families and looking for other ways to have people in their lives. Um, and we could talk about how that happens and like the feelings around it and everything. But as far as just strictly friendship stuff, I don't know. I feel like we covered a lot. Um,
Yes.
have we did we cover at all like friendship loss, like losing a friend?
Well, we just mentioned that it can be really hard, but that could be like another topic as well. We could
Yeah.
talk about losing a
Hmm.
friendship because that is the thing. I would like to say if you have friends in your life and they all of a sudden stop talking to you and you're not sure why, maybe just check in with them and
Yeah.
ask them because maybe they felt that you didn't value the friendship as much as they did. and they don't know how to have the conversation around it, but they might miss you. Their feelings might be hurt. And if
Yeah.
you valued that friendship and you miss that friend, maybe reach out to them and just be like, hey, I just wanted to,
Be as real as you can, I would say.
yeah,
Like
like,
for me, being real has almost always worked. Like, and it's what I revert back to. Like, hey, let's just like get to the bottom of this and be clear about this instead of kind of beating around the bush.
yeah, yeah. But I'm just
Mm,
thinking too, sometimes it's like, hey, I just want to touch base and like, I haven't heard
yeah.
from you in a while. Did I hurt
Yeah.
your feelings? You know,
Yeah.
is everything okay? I miss you. You know, sometimes just like an I miss you
Hmm.
is really important too. And I
Yeah.
think, and then it gives them opportunity to be like, well, I don't think we should be friends anymore, or to not say anything at all, which is also a response to them saying they don't want to be friends anymore. Do you know? So
Right.
I think, just
And it
some,
is hard and it is scary, but I do think it's necessary to do that.
Mhm.
Like just to close that chapter if you need to close it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I had a friendship too this year that I had to be like, was a couple of people where I was like, no, we're not gonna be friends anymore because
Yeah.
I needed you and you showed up really horribly for me and you were not a good friend at all in the time when I needed you, so I no longer want you to be my friend. And
Yeah, and
it's
I mean it's fair. Like it's a fair it's a fair point. And I recently, like within the last year and a half, I'm sure had that friendship breakup with one of my closest friends in my life
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
I was not getting well, let's her boyfriend was very disrespectful to me, like consistently, over a period of time. And I took it and I took it and I took it, and then finally I'm like, okay, after this last visit, I can't do this anymore, but I'm going to bring this up with you. Like maybe I could just, we could just go back to you and me instead of you and me and him on every visit. And basically what happened was she was like, she cut me off. And that was one of my closest friendships of my life. So that was really, really painful. And so that'll happen sometimes too.
Mhm.
But and before I would say, I'm just going to close myself off to people. It's not worth the pain.
Mhm.
But I had to work through that and fight through that and be like, but it's so worth it when you do find the right people,
Yeah.
it is worth it. I mean, you're going to get pain with it, but it is so worth it when you find the right people.
And you know what? Sometimes people that friendship was everything you needed at the time.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it can't necessarily grow with you or evolve with you.
Hmm.
And so that is like a thing too, but I think
Yeah, you can outgrow people. Hmm.
yeah, and like that friendship for that period of your life was so essential and it helped you in that moment and then you were like, "Wait, my self-worth evolved and
Yep.
I'm no longer willing to accept that."
Yep.
So now I have to honor my self-worth and that
Yeah.
means I have to set these boundaries and these limits and honor my self-worth and
And it's
honor how
scary.
I want to be treated. And
Yeah.
that's a whole nother thing too. But I just want to remind everybody because of the whole isolation thing, if you loved a friend and you're no longer friends with them and you're not sure why, if you haven't heard from them, just reach out to them.
Yep.
And if you know a friend that doesn't have close family, maybe just check in on them a couple more times more than you normally do.
Yeah.
Just
Hmm.
to just say, hey, how are you? I'm thinking about you. I love you. You matter.
Yeah.
You belong. And if you know people who are estranged from their family for whatever reason, give them a little extra love too. I had a
Yeah.
client who spent their whole Christmas completely alone and they thought it was going to be okay, but it turned out to be like their worst holiday ever.
Yeah.
And it's like just sometimes you think it doesn't matter, but just like wishing them a Merry Christmas or saying I'm thinking of you can just like
It goes a long way.
mean so, yeah, it can just be the little thing that just like made their day seem bearable, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Because especially if you've come from like a family that's does all the holidays and is very in touch and stuff, and you're estranged from them, you'll be sitting at home alone. Your phone's there's no notifications, there's no anything, and you're really feeling the loneliness.
Yeah.
Um,
And I want to
so
say too, like it's not your responsibility in a sense to take care of your friends, but it is something that you can do. I don't know, it's like one of those things where it's like it's not your responsibility, but it is your privilege
yes,
to
I
love
agree with
people
that.
that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yes, I totally agree with that.
Did I say
Um,
that in a way that makes sense though?
I mean, it made perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think it's just the privilege of you have a lot. You have a biological family. You probably have a lot of friends and everything. Just include that friend who's estranged from their family or, doesn't have much family. Include them in your life as much as you can because they don't have what you have. And I feel like that's important. Like an important part of community is sharing what we have.
Yeah. Only if you feel called to, though. Like, don't fill
Yes.
it out of
Yeah.
obligation.
Yeah.
Fill it out of like, oh, yeah, I never thought about it, and I would love to love my friends that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Not, don't do it if you feel like, what? This is more work. I hate this.
Yeah,
Then
right.
don't do it because that's only going to add resentment, right?
Yes, so you don't want resentment like there. So do it as you are able.
Yes. Yes. Okay, well, I think we covered so much. I think this is like a good little spot to end our conversation.
Awesome.
Anybody who wants to add to the conversation, please do so in the comments. You can agree with us, disagree with us, whatever you want to do. This is just a discussion to have. We just have our perspectives and our experiences, and yours could be completely different, and that's beautiful too. So I just want to start talking about friendship because as adults, we need friendship. We long for belonging. We want to feel loved. Everyone wants to feel loved.
Hmm.
Everyone in the entire world wants to know that someone would miss them if they died today. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. You want to leave
So,
some kind of a legacy behind.
yeah.
Hmm.
So I think it's a privilege to love our friends, to be there for them, and to uplift their life. So thank,
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Ariel. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Whoever did, even if it's only one of you, love you for listening. And yeah, have a beautiful day and be you. And remember that you're beautiful, you're brilliant, and you matter. So thank you for being here today.